shocker. Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when Uncle Casey found out that the WNBA is struggling to maintain their ratings without Caitlin Clark. To make matters worse, and this is something I have definitely noticed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially since the All-Star game.
The WNBA spent the first half of the season telling the world it was in the middle of a historic boom. Primetime slots, record merchandise sales, headlines declaring that women's basketball had finally arrived. But then came one injury, and the boom started sounding more like an echo. Caitlin Clark, the player at the center of the league's biggest rating spikes, has been sidelined for weeks. And the moment she stepped out of the spotlight, the numbers didn't just dip, they fell off a cliff. We're talking millions of viewers gone, advertisers panicking, networks wondering if they bought into a product that only works when one player is on the floor. This isn't just about a groin injury. This is about what happens when an entire business model leans on one star, and what the WNBA's sudden ratings collapse says about its future.
And that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-poppingly bad. We're talking about down in unrivaled territory.
When Caitlin Clark is playing, the WNBA looks like a league on the rise. Her debut matchups against Angel Reese drew 2.7 million viewers on ABC, peaking at over 3.1 million. The kind of numbers this league hasn't seen in 2 decades. Advertisers love it. Networks love it. Even casual fans who don't know the rules suddenly tune in. But the moment she's not in uniform, the story changes fast. The most recent Chicago Sky versus Indiana Fever game without Clark, barely 1.3 million viewers. That's a drop of more than 1.4 million from the peak just a few months ago. And this isn't some every sport has its ups and downs fluctuation. In TV terms, that's catastrophic. A 40% drop in a matter of weeks makes network executives start asking dangerous questions, like whether they overpaid for those rights in the first place. The cold truth? Without Clark, even marquee matchups aren't marquee anymore. They're just another game in a crowded sports calendar. And in that environment, the WNBA gets drowned out almost instantly. But the league's reliance on one superstar isn't the only red flag here. Because when you zoom in on the schedule, you realize this entire historic season has been propped up by a single formula. From opening night, the league's marketing department didn't bother hiding its golden ticket. Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. 5 scheduled meetings, prime networks, weekend slots. This was their cash cow, and it worked, as long as both were healthy. The first matchup, electric. Clark's triple-double, a blowout win, foul controversy, and social media clips flying everywhere. The second, still strong. Nearly 2 million viewers in prime time, one of the most watched WNBA games in decades. But then came the third, fourth, and fifth. Clark still in, but the shine fading. Viewership slipping. Then the disaster scenario. Both stars out. The marquee game suddenly became a middle-of-the-pack matchup that couldn't even match last year's numbers. This is the problem with building an entire season around one rivalry. The moment it's gone, there's nothing left to keep the casual fans. And instead of finding a way to replace that draw, the league has been leaning on something even riskier, a constantly changing injury timeline that feels more like a marketing stunt than a medical update. At first, the update sounded harmless, day-to-day with a groin injury. Fans assumed it was a short-term setback, a week, maybe 2, and she'd be back. But then the story changed. Day-to-day became out indefinitely. ESPN quietly circled August 12th as a possible return date. Then, just days before that game, Clark was listed as a game-time decision against the Dallas Wings. Sounds promising, until you hear her own coach, Stephanie White, admit she hadn't even been practicing. Within hours, the listing flipped from game time to out, and the whole thing felt less like transparency and more like a PR stunt. This is a classic desperation move. Dangle the idea of a star's return just long enough to keep fans buying tickets and tuning in, even if you know she's nowhere near ready. It might work once or twice. But when people realize they're being strung along, trust evaporates. And here's the irony. The secrecy isn't entirely bad for Clark. The less teams know about her exact condition, the less they can target it when she returns. But for the league, every false alarm chips away at credibility and leaves the product looking hollow without her. And the truth is, this injury didn't happen in a vacuum. It's part of a much bigger problem the WNBA's been ignoring all season, one that could shorten Clark's career if they don't fix it. From her very first game, Caitlin Clark has been the league's biggest attraction and its biggest target. Opponents know that if you can slow her down physically, you can slow the whole Fever offense. And with the way WNBA officiating has handled her, there's almost no downside to playing her rough. Landing space violations? Ignored. Arm grabs on drives? Play on. Clear hacks at the rim? Nothing but silence from the whistle. It's the kind of treatment that would never fly for established stars in other leagues, or even certain college players. Paige Bueckers gets a different whistle. So do veterans like Breanna Stewart or A'ja Wilson. The result? Clark takes hit after hit, night after night, with no consistent protection. That kind of constant contact doesn't just cause one-off injuries, it adds up. Soft tissue damage, lingering soreness, the kind of wear and tear that forces players to sit out weeks, or worse, changes how they play entirely. And that's the frustrating part for fans. This isn't about toughness or grit. Clark's proven she can handle pressure. It's about the league recognizing that the player driving its biggest numbers is also taking the hardest hits and doing nothing to stop it. If Clark had been officiated like a star from day one, would she still be playing right now? Probably. And if she were still playing, the WNBA wouldn't be staring at a ratings freefall. But the effects of her absence don't stop with Indiana Fever games. The damage is spreading across the entire schedule. The WNBA's problem isn't just that Fever games tank without Caitlin Clark. It's that every game without her feels the hit. Look at the numbers. Sun versus Sun, just 180,000 viewers. Dream versus Mercury, 160,000. In an era where the league keeps claiming historic growth, those are numbers you'd expect from a low-traffic YouTube stream, not a nationally televised professional sport. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If this growth were truly league-wide, those numbers wouldn't be collapsing this hard. They'd at least hold steady in the 250 to 300K range. Instead, the second Clark is out, the entire product's viewership collapses. This isn't women's basketball is booming. It's one player is booming, and the rest of the league is riding shotgun. We've seen this before. In the 1990s, people didn't tune in for just any NBA game. They tuned in for Michael Jordan. Without him, ratings fell. The difference? The NBA still had a deep bench of stars and rivalries to keep casual fans interested. The WNBA doesn't. And now the league's heading into the most important part of the season without its top draw, risking something far more dangerous than a bad week of ratings. Every week Caitlin Clark sits, the WNBA isn't just losing ratings, it's losing habits. Casual fans are creatures of routine. When Clark plays, they make time to watch. When she's out, they find something else to do. Another sport, another show, another habit that doesn't include the WNBA. And once those habits shift, good luck pulling them back. That's why her eventual return is a massive gamble for the league. If she steps back on the court in late August or the playoffs and ratings don't bounce back to those early season highs, the historic growth narrative collapses in real time. Networks won't buy, just give it more time. Advertisers won't wait for next season. They're paying for a sure thing, not a maybe. And the reality is, the league has built its leverage for future TV deals entirely on Clark's ability to keep numbers high. Even worse, this injury doesn't just cost the WNBA now. It could cost them for years. If Clark's usage and physical punishment shorten her prime, the league loses the one player they've built their business model around before they've even had time to develop a second star who can draw like she does. And make no mistake, the playoffs will be the ultimate stress test. Because if Clark's return doesn't instantly reignite fan interest, the numbers will tell the story the league's PR team can't spin. And that leads to the bigger question. What does the WNBA actually do when its one-player business model is suddenly exposed? Strip away the hype and the WNBA's marketing plan is painfully simple. Caitlin Clark in the spotlight, everyone else in the shadows. Highlights, commercials, primetime slots, merchandise pushes, almost everything this season has been built around her. And sure, it works, until she's not playing. Then the spotlight goes dark, and the league has no one ready to step in. It's not that there aren't other talented, marketable players. A'ja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Kelsey Plum, Sabrina Ionescu, all championship-caliber talents who could headline campaigns. But they haven't been promoted to casual audiences the way Clark has. The average non-WNBA fan couldn't pick most of them out of a lineup. That's what makes the dependency so dangerous. Without Clark, the product instantly feels smaller, less urgent, less worth rearranging your weekend for. the growth disappears, and what's left is the same small core of dedicated fans who were watching before she arrived. In business terms, that's like running a company where 80% of your revenue comes from a single client. The moment that client walks away, or in this case, sits out with an injury, the whole operation teeters on collapse. And right now, the WNBA is teetering. The only way to change that is to protect Clark, promote other stars just as aggressively, and make sure fans have more than one reason to tune in. Otherwise, the league's future will always be one bad injury away from crisis mode. The WNBA has reached a moment it can't ignore. One injury didn't just sideline a player. It exposed the league's entire foundation. If Caitlin Clark is on the court, the product feels electric, urgent, worth watching. Without her, ratings fall, networks lose interest, and the historic growth narrative starts to sound like wishful thinking. That's not sustainable, and everyone from owners to advertisers knows it. The league has two choices: protect Clark, not just by promoting her, but by ensuring officiating gives her the same respect and safety other stars receive. And just as importantly, invest in making other players household names so that when Clark sits, fans still care enough to watch. Or keep riding this one-player wave until the inevitable crash and hope the fallout doesn't undo the progress they've made. The truth is, this isn't just about one injury, one season, or one star. It's about whether the WNBA can stand on its own 2 feet, or whether it will always live and die on the health of a single player. So here's the question. Is this the start of a long-term boom or the warning sign that the bubble's about to burst?